Hello, everybody. How are you? Lovely to see you all. You'll note as you're coming in there that you're all muted as you arrive in. There was a bit too many clinking the glasses on the last couple of tastings, and there was a couple of not so much complaints about
too much crack had at the start.
So yeah, you're all muted, but I would ask you to unmute if at any point you want to dive in. Hopefully you're all wines ready and open and breathing, and loads of glasses there, and maybe some of the food recipes cooked as well, ready to go. But we're in for a really nice hour and a half thereabouts now in the next few minutes. So we'll just hang on another couple of moments for more to join us. Brilliant, but yeah, everyone is pretty much straight in, prompt. Even this whole going back to the office thing is not necessarily then affecting everyone's timekeeping. You all would have hopefully got the email I sent both yesterday and today. So I sent another follow-up one today to you all to suggest maybe opening the reds at 5 o'clock or thereabouts. If you haven't opened all of the wines, if you are opening all the wines tonight, then please open them all, get them all open. Obviously, especially the reds, but even the Meursault on the white is really going to be a white that will just change as it's opened, and it'll be really expressive, I think, by the time we get to it. But we've just another couple, I'd say, to come in before we kind of get immediately kicked off into it. I think Christophe is here. We're joined this evening by Christophe, Deola and Mark Allen, who is the export director from Louis Latour. So guys, if you can unmute at least and let us know when you're here, because the last thing we want to do is introduce you and you wouldn't be here. So that would be bad news altogether. We are being recorded. So of course, as usual, if any of you have done these tastings before, you'll get the recording of the tasting next week. And if you don't open all the wines or want to go back on that tasting at any point, we'll publish it so that it'll be there and available online. And we'll send you the URL link as well with a bit more details and more information on a PDF on Latour and on some of the information that we hear tonight. As a quick introduction, I suppose, firstly, again, also anyone who hasn't done any of these tastings, I'm Will.
I'm Michael. I speak as well.
You do speak, yeah. Sorry. And it's lovely to have you here. We've done over the 2 years, as some of you will know, having been on some of these tastings. We've had lots of winemakers. We've had we had some really interesting ones, and ones that we've been totally engaged in entirely ourselves. We're just before we came on here, we were making a comparison about Burgundy, and the fascinating the part as well that we're both really looking forward to. How many appellations and how many different wines come from Burgundy. It's absolutely fascinating. We've both been there, and still it feels like it's just an absolute minefield to understand.
It's just incredibly difficult to understand. That's why we were going to ask many questions that I want to hear answered. Like small vineyards that I've been to, that I really don't understand the soil. The soil is the big thing. I think with Burgundy, it's a place that only these wines can come from. You can't really make. We tried the Meursault earlier on, and we just can't wait to let everybody sort of try it together and discuss it, because I don't think I've tasted a wine as good ever. It's just awesome. So
on that, just again, on those 160 appellations in Burgundy, for some context, Burgundy is about 175, 180 kilometers high, there or thereabouts. And there's 160 appellations in there, so 160 different plots. Now the guys will give us far better perspective and knowledge than I can, but by comparison, New Zealand is 10 times that long, and there are maybe 10 appellations of design for their different wines. So it's really a minefield. It's going to be a real. I'm really looking forward to understanding and to learning a little bit more about the detail, the history of Louis Latour. It's a company that are 200 years old. They're in their 11th generation. Tonight we have Mark Allen, who's the export director. He's with us, and also Christophe. I hope he's with us. I hope the guys are still here. So if you are here, yes. So if you are, lads, make yourselves known and unmute yourself if you will in your own time. But Mark is the export director with Louis Latour, and then we also have Christophe, who has been with Louis Latour since 2011. and has been the estate director since 2017. And really, he is in all things wine. The estate is 50 hectares, so it's monstrous. As a company, they own more Grand Cru vineyards on the Côte d'Or or the Golden Arc in Burgundy than anybody else. They're one of the only companies that make their own wooden barrels. So they control the process from start to finish. And we all know them. We all know them from restaurants, everyone knows the labels and the bottles. So it's a fascinating chance to try 6 different wines from here. So thank you all for coming, because this has been a real step up in quality and in price and in cost. But we really must put a big shout out and thank you to Latour's representatives in Ireland, Fev Wines, some of who I know are on the call tonight as well. But you guys you do an exceptional job for Latour. You represent them really, really well. You give us all the information we need so that we can pass it to everyone else. The wines all sell really, really well. And unfortunately, the prices from this region are going through the roof soon. So we so hold them for all of us as long as you possibly can. I'd love to introduce straight away so that you're not listening to us. Christophe, are you and Mark here? We would love to know.
Can you hear us? We're here.
Fantastic. Perfect. How are you?
Can you see us? I'm Mark.
And I'm Christophe, sir.
Hi guys, how are you? So lovely to have you on board, and thanks for being here. It's you're tell us where you are right now.
Oh, we're at the family house we call the castle of Corton-Grancey, which is in the middle of the Corton appellation, where we own a vast majority of our plots.
Brilliant. Okay, lovely.
And before, sorry, just if I can ask everybody to pour a glass of wine. Don't sit without any wine in your glass. We're going to start off with some Macon Looney. Just while we're listening to Christophe and Mark. Sorry, I just want to make sure everybody was aware.
Yeah, well, I think, guys, the plan, I suppose, over the next hour or so or hour and a half rather, is that the guys are going to give us a little bit of maybe some history of the estate. There's much of it, so a little bit of history of the domain and your involvement in it, and then we'll come back and we'll delve into the wines. Everybody knows the order of the wines, so as I said earlier, make sure they're open and pour a glass of Mâcon. It's the first wine, so I suppose after a little while we'll start to maybe hear a little bit more detail about it. Hopefully you all got your maps that the guys had sent over for us, which is, it's a really good starting point, isn't it, for what we're looking at tonight. It looks like a lot of homework, but it is Friday night, so let's keep this light-hearted and joyful and a bit of fun. And I suppose most importantly, at any point, please unmute yourself, dive in, ask any questions, either yourselves or you can raise the hand. We've all done this a million times at this point on millions of Zooms, or just drop a text in the chat. It's your chance to ask Christophe and Mark anything you want, and a chance to connect directly with the winemakers, which is the whole reason that we do this. So yeah, do that. Anything comes to mind. There are no silly questions, because believe me, just before we came on, we thought of an awful lot of silly questions. Burgundy is a minefield. Would you agree? Is Burgundy a minefield to understand for most of us?
So what we sort of have going to split up the presentation with Christophe a little bit, and I'm going to introduce you for the first 10 minutes a little bit about the world of Louis Latour and of course Burgundy. Yes, Burgundy always seems like a minefield to consumers and professionals alike, because there are many, many wines. But at the same time, Burgundy can be simplified in quite an easy way by just looking at the varietals that we farm in Burgundy. And of course, most of the world wine consumers recognize wines first and foremost by their varietal. So in Burgundy, for the white wines, we have one major grape variety which is recognized around the world, which is Chardonnay. And of course, there's a few other grape varieties that are less prevalent, and one especially called the Aligoté, which is used in some appellations to make the Aligoté wine, which was prevalent before the Chardonnay was such a world beater in the last 1,000 years. On the red side, of course, we have the famous Pinot Noir grape, which is homed in Burgundy. Actually, before 1395, so before the Burgundy was recognized as by Philippe the Hardy and historical figures like that. The Gamay grape was also planted in Burgundy, but in 1395 the grape was pushed further south to the Beaujolais. So today the Gamay grape is mostly found in the Beaujolais, but it's coming back with quite a storm, and the Gamay grape is going to become, I think, a big important wine in the future, because the big problem that we've had over the last few years is global warming, which has meant that in some cases we've had a bit of frost, and it's lowered some of the crops that we've had in the last few years. We've had good crops in 2000, 2001, 2020, 2019, 2020, and 2021, but they have been small. And as world demand for Burgundy is going up, it's putting a bit of pressure on the amount of wines that are available, and therefore, in some cases, in the specific vineyards of the Côte d'Or, pushing prices up. So we're in a situation where Burgundy is with small vintages in high demand, which is putting pressure on prices. So Burgundy can be seen as a complicated minefield if you look at the appellations, and we can talk a little bit more about the different wine regions a little later. Or we can make it quite an easy introduction and talk about the varietals as well as those appellations. Louis Latour, who has been farming the vineyards of Burgundy since 1797, when the first member of the family set up the company Louis Latour, so over 220 years ago. We were especially prevalent here in Alos-Courton, which is the hub of Louis Latour's business still today. And over the last 200 years, obviously, exports of wine have grown, consumption of wine have grown, which means that Louis Latour's business has developed. And especially since the late 60s and early 70s, the wine business has meant that Louis Latour is not only farming our own vineyards, but also buying in grapes from vineyards around the rest of Burgundy, including Macon, like the Macon Lumi that we're going to be drinking, which has meant that Louis Latour's developed this distribution network, or I would say this, not distribution network, a supply network, which means that we actually have over 100 different wine types in our portfolio. So we'll be tasting 6 tonight, which are amongst the most popular and also the most renowned for Maison Latour. Tasting wines also from outside of Burgundy, because Maison Latour, the Louis Latour family, have always been extremely dynamic and vigilant, and looking to how the business can, as well as being very traditional, expand and modernize. And in the late 70s, we saw that the growing demand for wines around the world also meant there was a shortage problem, because Burgundy is actually a very small area, running from Dijon up north in the Côte d'Or region to Centenay. It's 60 kilometers long, and there's only about 8,000 hectares of vineyards in that area. So as a wine region, Burgundy, if I'm right, Christophe, about a fifth of the size of Bordeaux.
Yeah.
About the fifth of the size of Bordeaux, and it explains why Burgundy wines are in short supply as soon as demand goes up, there isn't very many wines. If we take, for example, the vineyard of the Romanée Conti, perhaps the most famous of all Burgundy wines today, and that's certainly the most expensive, we are talking about 1.6 hectares of wine. And that means that, just under a hectare. So it means that there's about 3,000 to 4,000 bottles of this wine produced every year. So this is one of the reasons why Burgundy is seen as being the golden cup of Burgundy, because the wines, not only are they fantastic quality, but also they're in short supply. So tonight we're going to explain a little bit about the geography. Christophe's going to explain us a little bit about the geography of Burgundy, as well as the terroir, because Burgundy is also about its terroir. The terroir is the soils that make Burgundy up. Wine is also not just about the grape variety, it's about the earth and the area it comes from, and that's what we call terroir. In Burgundy, the terroir is a mix of clay and limestone, which are the soil types perfectly adapted to both the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. More of a clay type soil for the Pinot Noir, heavier soils, whereas the whiter soils, the limestone soils, are perfectly adapted to the Chardonnay and often found on the steeper slopes of Burgundy. And just behind us, we have the hill of Corton, Allos-Corton. In Allos-Corton, it's home to our most iconic wine of Maison Latour, which is the Corton Charlemagne. And Corton Charlemagne is named after the Holy Roman Emperor, who owned the land some 2,000 years ago. And it's a mixture of marl and limestone soils, which create a fantastic hub for the Chardonnay to get not only its freshness, its acidity, but also its amazing body in the wine.
Mark, just jump in there. I think I have quite a good image, I think, of the, if you're happy for me to share that, of the hill of Corton.
Yeah.
I think is right behind the vineyard. So let me just do that now, if you can see that. That one
there we go. That's perfect.
And of course, it shows, I think, it shows numerous sites here, doesn't it?
Yeah, so when we talk about appellations in Burgundy, it doesn't necessarily designate single vineyards. Corton Charlemagne, for example, is not just one vineyard, it's a selection of single vineyards that are collected under the vineyard name of Corton Charlemagne. So in all, Burgundy has 32 Grand Cru appellations, but if you split them into single vineyards, there's even more named vineyards than that. I think when Burgundy was recognized as a World Heritage Site in 2015, we counted more than 1,400 different vineyard sites. So that's why Burgundy seems to be such a minefield, and we can very quickly, even after many years of practicing living in Burgundy, there's not a chance that you know all the vineyards or have tasted all the wines. So that's one of the things that continues to keep us passionate about the wines of Burgundy. We never stop learning, even after 30 years of working in Burgundy. There's always something else to learn.
God, it's fascinating. And another point, Mark. Sorry, I'm going back there, but just to show, see what images I just had of the house itself. That's a nice place to spend a Friday evening. All right. I'll bring you back for now here, Mark. But I just one or two people just mentioned, Mark, I don't know if you guys have any, if your light, there's a real bright flicker on the light, and it's possibly because your lights are quite dimmed. Would there be any chance you might be able to brighten your lights just and make it just a little easier for
do you want it brighter?
Brighter, if it's at all possible. If I don't think it's just us, because
I don't think it's bright here. In fact,
is it okay? Okay, now that's okay.
It's because we're a little bit away from the camera. We're not in front of the. We've got a camera which may be.
It's just an unusual flicker, but of course it could be the camera. Then it could be the PC itself as well. That's better. That's actually a lot better straight away.
Yeah.
That's a lot better now.
Yeah, we can see
a lot better, guys.
Yeah.
A lot better now. Actually, we can see a whole lot better. Thank you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you on that.
No problem.
But
so at Maison Latour, the family, of course, are very proud of this tradition, and I think there are three words that are very important at Maison Latour. It's the tradition, and that is a backbone to the business. As I said, 11 generations, as you quite correctly said, 7 Louis Latours, because often the leading, there's only one generation, one family member per generation that runs the business, and it's often been called Louis. For the last 7, it's been Louis Paul, Louis Fabrice. Today, our general manager, president, and owner, of course, is Louis Fabrice Latour. So 7 Louis and 11 generations. So that's something which is we're very proud of course, and it's a tradition that only a few companies in the world, less than I think 40, can lay claim to being family owned and run for more than 200 years. Then the other word that is really important to us is innovation. Of course, to maintain a business and to keep it competitive in this modern world, we have to be innovative. And one of the things that has saved Maison Latour from several crises is this innovation, one of which was the second wine which we'll be tasting, the Grand Ardèche. So when Louis Latour realized in the late 70s that there was a huge demand for Chardonnay, we started looking outside of Burgundy to see which sites could plant Chardonnay and give us a quality that we could be proud of. We found this wonderful region 300 kilometers south, just over 300 kilometers south of us, called the Ardeche region, where we managed to find limestone soils similar to those of Burgundy and planted the Chardonnay. So that's the second word. And then, of course, the third word is quality. To maintain everything in this world, we have to be sure of the quality of the wines that we're doing. And again, I hope tonight in the tasting that you'll see that quality shining through. And that's why our name stays at the forefront of many wine lists around the world, because despite all the years, the generations, there's a continued entrepreneurial leadership that runs this business. And we're very proud, of course, of the vineyards that Louis Latour continues to farm under the guidance of Christophe, who I will hand over now.
Oh, thank you, Mark. So, as you might have here, Mark is a native English speaker, which I'm not. So I'll make short a sentence, if you don't mind. So yeah, long story short, Burgundy is 2 varieties: Chardonnay for the whites, Pinot Noir for the red. That's what you have to keep in mind. Then there is 3 main regions: the Côte d'Or, where we are, which is like kind of historical center and home of the most famous wines from Burgundy. North, between here and Paris, you have Chablis, which is like more crispy white wines. We don't see any oak, where in Côte d'Or we usually have some oak. And then Mâcon, which is between here and Lyon, and where it's mostly Chardonnay, like Chablis. And there is also wine with cask, no oak, but a little bit more full-bodied, than what you usually find in Chablis. Okay, so the Macon you will taste comes from this region. You won't taste tonight any wines coming from the northern part, Chablis. You will taste one from Côte d'Or and Mâcon. Moreover, you will also taste a few wines who comes from the southernmost part of France, because Louis Latour activity is an estate I'm running, but also a merchant house, a négociant, as we say in France, which means that we have our own wines, our own vines, which we make wine and we sell from, but also because we have opportunity on the market, we are sourcing grapes from other growers and put our label on it. That's what the merchant house does. The idea is that if we put the label on, it's because we're sure of the quality and we offer you a guarantee of quality, even if we are just choosing the wines and not making it, or we are choosing the grape but not growing it. Okay?
You have to understand also that the price of land is very, very expensive in Burgundy.
And so at the beginning of the 80s, late Louis Noël Latour already found that the Chardonnay from Burgundy was a bit expensive. And so he headed south and he asked my predecessor, Denis, to find a place where we could grow Chardonnay with partners at a cheaper price than what you find in Burgundy. That a wine we'll taste later on. And we did the same thing in the 90s in the south of France, in the Var, where we do Domaine de Valmoisine and where we have Pinot Noir. And in the last 10 years, we did that again and planted some Pinot Noir in the south of the Beaujolais, where you have limestone. And that's the second red wine you will taste tonight. So you will see that we are a Pinot Chardonnay specialist. We are deeply rooted in Burgundy, but still we try to bring our kind of expertise in other places in France, where we think we can make great Chardonnay and great Pinot at a cheaper price.
Okay. It's fabulous, Christophe. I think I failed to mention that at the start about the idea that we're going south tonight, but I think it's one of the it's one of the things that we're really looking forward to, is tasting these side by side, the Ardeche, and tasting that against the more northerly wines as well. It's
we're forever during tastings we do for other people. We're forever telling people about the Grand Ardèche Chardonnay, how awesome it is quality-wise, and very much in the style of Burgundy. Very sort of lovely integrated oak, nice clean Chardonnay, and yeah, I can't. Yeah, and the price is so much better.
So why don't we start the tasting with the first wine, the Mâcon Luny, and then we can get on with the explanation of differences between the various regions.
We will start with the Mâcon Luny, and so we'll be able to explain more and more about Burgundy through the wines also, if you don't mind.
So first the name, Mark, Mâcon Luny. What take the mystery out of that? So it's from
just to underline that Mâcon Luny is one of the benchmark Chardonnay wines of Louis Latour in the world, and it's the most popular Chardonnay in Ireland. We've been the development of the Louis Latour family business is also a development of the Burgundy vineyards. Don't forget that before the 1950s and the 1940s, there was exportation of wine, but very few people drank wine in markets across Europe and across the globe. And as the more and more people started drinking, there was more and more demand. And so pioneers like Louis Latour started looking for vineyards that could produce not only quality, but also relatively big volumes of wine. And Mr. Latour discovered the Mâcon area in the mid-1950s, and we started exporting Mâcon Luni to the US, to other European markets like Ireland and Italy, and as far away as Japan in the early 60s. And it's very popular, become a wine which is extremely liked because it's not only rich and has good characteristics of the Chardonnay grape, but it's also affordable. And it's a great combination that has meant that Burgundy has not only the high-profile wines like Coton Chardonnay, like Chevalier Montrachet, like the Meursault, that can be very, very expensive, but more affordable wines like the Mâcon Luni that give the consumer a different choice and an affordable choice of great wines from the limestone soils of Burgundy.
Okay, so let's start with that Mâcon Luni. At first, so that's a wine that does not see any oak, which means that what you have on the nose are the varietals aromas and the terroir aromas of the Chardonnay. So you will see it's from the south of Burgundy. So if you are used to Chablis wines, you will see it's more aromas, probably riper aromas with like peach, yellow fruits, and things like that. And you also feel maybe a bit like muscat aromas, because there are a few Chardonnay that have muscat aromas, and people in the Macon area like a lot to plant a bit of this Chardonnay in their vineyard, which enhances again this very, very fruity side on the nose of these wines.
Whilst remaining fresh. And I think that one of the things that we spoke about earlier is the different climate zones that we have throughout Burgundy. Christophe mentioned earlier how cool Chablis can be. And as we move further south, the climate doesn't change completely, but does get slightly warmer, which gives us, again, different style to the wine. And this Mâcon is a very good example of a wine from a more southerly climate, which gives us those aromas that don't have the same bite, the same steely texture that a Chablis might have, but more of a fruit texture that Christophe explained.
How similar are the soils here to Chablis? I mean, are they soils pretty close, or are they quite different?
They're quite different because it's always in Burgundy limestone and clay, but it's not the same limestone, not coming from the same period in geological history. Okay, the soil of Chablis is closer to the soil of Mentoussalon and Sancerre than it is to Mâcon. Mâcon soil is more looking like the soils from Côte d'Or, but the difference between Côte d'Or and Mâcon is the soil, but also very much the exposition. You know.
Are the sites in Mâcon flatter?
No, not really. But it's, you know, Côte d'Or, to explain you how it works, the vineyard in Côte d'Or is like, you have to imagine that it's a vineyard that has been developed during the Middle Age. And, you know, there were a frosty period during Middle Age. And which means that you are, again, even today, you're very up north in Europe to make good red wines because you don't have a lot of sun in Burgundy. And so, you know, when I'm in the castle now and I look east, I see a very flat land, okay? And then there is a hill forming and then many, many hills. And the vineyard is just on the very first hill in Côte d'Or, because when the sun goes up, this hill has the very first ray of light, and it has sun quite late during the day. So it's the sunniest place and the hottest place in Burgundy, which means that it was the only place during the Middle Age where you were able to ripen red grapes. Okay, so maybe now you have a bit with haute côte and so of vineyards on the second and third hills, but historically, and if you look at your map, you will see that it's just a very tiny strip of land.
Narrow, very narrow.
The Côte d'Or, because it's just the first hill, and then you don't have any more vineyards behind that. On the contrary, in the Mâcon, it's a vineyard that has been developed later, outside of the frosty age era during the Middle Age, which means that it was a bit hotter, and so you have vineyards on all of the hills, not just the first one, and which means that you have different exposition. You have places which look east, places which look west, north, south, and that's very different. But it's still quite a hilly place. It's not very flat land.
Okay.
Well, can I ask you, Chris? Although I think I know what the answer, but what about the aging potential of this? Is it really for the first year or two, or is there any potential? Do you think in a wine like this to last longer?
I think even for the white wines, you should be able to leave them aside for 3, 4, 5 years at least. I'm not sure it's of very great interest to leave them, but they won't lose their quality and freshness too much. Sure, the best idea to me is the kind of wine you go to the supermarket or to your wholesaler, or you, by the way, choose it on the internet, but as soon as you've received it, you can open it and have pleasure. It's not the kind of wine you need to stock for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. It won't become bad after 3 years, but you don't need to wait for 3 years.
Will I ask that question again when we get to the Meursault?
Sorry?
Will I ask that question again when we come to the Meursault, and will the answer be quite different?
Probably, but you'll have to ask the question at that moment.
Great. Should we maybe move on to? Yeah, we've poured the Grand Ardèche here, so it's fascinating to listen to you. We could keep talking about Macon, couldn't we? It's a whistle-stop tour here, I know, of Burgundy to go up and down, but
one of the just to come back to the Macon, one of the notes that's just hit me quite is the savoury notes of it as well. A bit of a as well as the fruit, you've got this wonderful freshness and wonderful savoury flavours, which makes it a great wine to drink, not only as an aperitif, but also with easy, simple menus, and even a chicken dish with a bit of cream on it or something like that. It's a very refreshing wine, the Macon. I think that's something to take away. It's a lovely, refreshing wine. In the middle of summer, if you want a lovely, refreshing wine, this is the perfect example of what you can enjoy without having to find that the wine's got a lot of acidity. It's just got that right balance to make it the perfect choice.
We always find that if you give it a little bit of time, you get this honey from it. It's just a lovely honey note. It fills out on your palate. And that's what I like most about the Macon.
It does. It changes slightly, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It does start to. If you leave that in the glass and move as it comes up to room temperature, it does take on this honey, this honey texture. We use it all the time in virtual tastings because it's just a perfect example of white Burgundy at an affordable price. Is how we kind of describe it, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly a benchmark wine. That's without question.
So then if we move on the Grand Ardèche. So Grand Ardèche is a Chardonnay coming from even southern than the Mâcon. But what's interesting here is it's a wine that is fermented in oak. We make our own barrel. We build something like 3,500 barrels a year. And we use the very same barrel for our Grand Cru wines from the estate in Burgundy and for the Grand Ardèche you will taste. So the idea of Louis Noël Latour was to make the Grand Ardèche the exact same way he would make a Bourgogne, traditional, but at a cheaper price. So it's grapes. We follow the growers all year long, and we do the picking ourselves. We decide on the day of the picking, and we make the wine ourselves. And the fermentation goes in our barrels. So here you have a sense of Burgundy at a cheaper price. You have that. The idea at Latour has always been, when we make our barrel, not to give a taste of oak or a smell of oak, but more to work on the texture and to bring more backbone and more shoulder to the wine, instead of having lots of vanilla and things like that we don't find really interesting. That's not what we look for. We're looking for in our Grand Cru, and that's not what we're looking for in the Grand Ardèche.
So it's not that the oak barrels are not to add flavor as such, they're just to actually possibly to oxidize the wines a small bit, just to give them sort of a different angle.
Yeah. It's the kind of oxidation, but also what the wood brings to the wine, but more on
it's to enhance it.
Sugary content, it brings a sense of sugar without bringing sugar.
You have to be careful about sugar, because I was just reading today in the Wine Spectator that people saying there's too much sugar in wine. That's another thing. There's no sugar in our wines, less than 2 grams per litre. They're dry white wines. All the sweetness is vinified out, and it's the natural weight of the wine that gives us that impression of sweetness, and also that oiliness in the wine.
Mark, you're gone. We can only see your arm.
Sorry.
Yes, there we have you. Okay, great.
That oiliness of the wine. Sorry, I didn't want to get too close to Christophe, because of.
There are too many gossips.
Mark, can I just ask? Are you suggesting that it's the oak? I might have missed that. Is it the oak that's bringing part of that?
Yeah. I think that what we've got, often people say that, this is a sweet wine or a dry wine. All the white wines of Burgundy at Louis Latour are dry, which means that they've got no residual sugar, okay? And the oak in the wine enhances the natural viscosity, the natural oiliness of the wine, and gives it that slightly sweet sensation, but it's not sweetness, it's the wine's natural weight.
Okay, lovely. And could I ask, if you were to compare it, so given that this is to be representative of white Burgundy but made elsewhere, if you were to compare this, where would you put this in Burgundy? So what is this Meursault? Is this your best? Is this comparable to what up in the north?
I would probably, when I take that, say something like a lesser village appellation like Saint-Romain or Océ-Durès.
Okay.
Which means that as it is really made in a Côte, like we do in Côte d'Or, like we do for the estates, but at the same time, it lacks a bit of profoundness, to be like a Meursault Premier Cru or something like that. It more looks like, and you have that tiny bit of acidity that I would rely to a place like, a little bit behind the hill, like Océ-Durès or Saint-Romain.
Somebody is just after asking this question. I know you have another wine from the Ardeche just called Ardesh Chardonnay. What's the difference between the Grand and the
Ardeche? The Ardeche is vinified in stainless steel tank, like the Macon, and the Grand Ardèche is vinified more in a Côte d'Orion way, in oak.
So the Ardeche, would that be more similar to the Macon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We call the Grand Ardèche in-house the baby Coton Charlemagne.
Do you? Okay.
Because it's made in the same in the same, with the same love and the same attention, with the barrels, the same barrels. Maybe they're not new oak barrels, but it has the same attention as the Corton Charlemagne. Doesn't have the same origin, which means that we don't have the same pedigree, but we do make it in the same way.
It would be it's a good exercise to actually keep some of this in your glass when you're trying the Meursault, to see how good the Meursault actually is against it. Not saying anything against this wine, but when you go to the Meursault, you can tell the difference.
But yeah, but also how good this is for 20 euro bottle, isn't it? Like it's and Christophe, what about what happened, because this is so new? This project in the Ardeche is 50 years old maybe now, 40 years old. So in another 50 years, will it become more complex? Will the age of the vines and the age of the land there have added anything to it, or will it just never ever be? Will it never bring the same levels that Burgundy brings?
No, I hope there is no people from Ardeche listening to me, but it will never be the same because Chardonnay has been selected in Burgundy, and it's hometown. It doesn't play in Burgundy like it plays elsewhere, and it's really well adapted to here. It's well suited to lots of places in the world, but its hometown is Burgundy, And then also, by the way, also for matter of prices, we don't have the same aim in terms of yield and so on in Ardeche. So you will never be able to make the same wine in Ardeche than we are doing here.
Okay.
Well, you're doing a damn good stab on it anyway so far. Like it's really great. It's a while since I've had it, and it's always a lovely surprise because just value. We're constantly looking. Everybody wants what is the, not just in Burgundy, but Burgundy, of course, is only getting more expensive. But in all regions, we are always, all of us, looking for value. And what's the alternative that not everybody knows, that not everybody is buying, that will give me great value in my glass. And like this is really wonderful, isn't it? A white wine, yeah.
It was a real pioneering gesture that Louis Latour did in discovering and planting Chardonnay in the Ardeche. It's for the world of French wine, it was a game changer. Planting Chardonnay in the Ardeche, it was the first varietal labeled Chardonnay in France, and today not only do consumers in all over the world drink this wine, but our colleagues in Burgundy, they drink Grand Ardèche. It is a fantastic value and is constantly delivering success, not because of its price, but because of its quality.
Super.
Brilliant. Does it make up much of a percentage of the overall production from the company, or is it quite small?
It's a few percent still. We do 70% of wine from Burgundy, and then with the ones from outside of Burgundy, 25-30%. And so between Ardeche and Valmoisine.
Okay.
I think it's important to say that our hearts and minds are still in Burgundy. The Ardeche, the wines from outside of Burgundy, are again adaptations of being able to have something available for consumers that allows them almost to discover the Burgundy style of wines, and then hopefully climb the ladder to discover the real gems that are here on the hillside of Corton or on the hillside of the Côte de Nuit. This is where Burgundy is born and where the real gems are.
Is there any other place in the world that comes close to Burgundy for white wine?
No.
I think.
Next question.
I always love how that question, if you ask an Australian or a Kiwi or someone else, the answer is always so different.
You know, we also do what you expect from us.
But at the same time, that's why I think Louis Latour is being so open-minded. Look, we have planted Chardonnay elsewhere than Burgundy. And I can tell you a story. When I joined Louis Latour 30 years ago, that I had friends at the Lycée Viticole and I one day went to have dinner with a family. And it was just after Louis Latour had planted Chardonnay in the Ardeche. And I got a grilling because it was a sacrilege. But 30 years on, it's widely accepted as being a visionary project that created not only opportunity, but also recognition for France to be seen as also a pioneering wine country and not just traditional in the aspects that we're looking at. I think it's important to be able to have both that tradition and pioneering innovation, visionary outlook. That's what makes Louis Latour special and unique.
Just one more thing. Can I ask? There are no screw cap wines in any of these. Do you have any screw caps in Latour?
No, we don't do screw caps. Next question. Sorry, I'm joking. No, you know, that's also a matter of philosophy for us. We've been making wine for more than 200 years now. We've always used cork, and the idea you ask about will the Macon be able to age? And I told you, yeah, but it's not really interesting. But in the end, all the wines we do must be able to age, and I think there is something interesting in aging. Maybe it's one you want to enjoy on their fruit, and so you won't let them age. But in the end, you might have very good surprises. You know, for the 40 years of the Ardesh project, we've tasted all of the wines we've been making there for 40 years. And they were amazing wines from Ardeche that were 20, 25, 30 years old, you know. It's a place you would never expect to have great white wines 30 years old. So you have and that's what we want to do. And screw cap does not that. You know, I used to work in Australia, and I remember a winemaker telling me, "Oh, mate, I've tasted that Chardonnay, and it was 10 years old, and it was tasting as if you have bottled it yesterday." And I said, "So why did you keep it for 10 years? Buy a bottle from last year." You see? So with screw caps, you don't have that. That's the good thing with the corks. You have wines evolving. Yeah, maybe, and we try to avoid that as much as we can. You might have a problem once in a while, but still you will have a wine which will be evolving. And the Macon from today won't be the exact same in 2 or 3 years. And that's what is interesting in wine. If you want to take the exact same thing every day by Coca-Cola or Pepsi, I don't know.
But is that not also an argument for screw cap on Macon and on your more entry ones?
No, because we want to treat it as the great one it is and give it a chance to have a few customers living them and enjoying them in 10 years.
And the discovery of something that evolves with time.
Okay, that's a very good answer. It's better than your first answer, which is no.
So take us to the Holy Grail here.
Yeah,
let's.
So next is the Meursault Premier Cri, Château de Blagny, 2017. So here it's coming from Meursault, probably the most well-known name from the white wines in Burgundy. It's quite a big village, and which is producing probably 95% white wines. And it's very well known for making full-bodied whites, making in a Côte d'Orient way with the use of oak fermentation. And I think we were talking with Audrey about climate change, and I think what's really interesting in that wine is, you see, I explained to you that the wines are made on the first hill looking from the east. And historically, the bottom of the hill does not make for the better wines because because of erosion, a lot of soil, lots of water, and because there is lots of water, the grapes are not as ripe as in places where there is less water. And then you have the middle of the slope where you have the Premier and Grand Cru, which is usually considered the very best place because it's very well exposed, you have a lot of sun, and you don't have a lot of water. And then you have the top of the hill. And the problem of the top of the hill, there's little soil because of erosion. And so you have little water, which is quite a good point, but also because of that conception of a vineyard from a time where it used to be complicated to ripen every year the grapes. The very top of the hill, you know, when you go 100 meter high, you lose between 0.6 and 1 degrees Celsius, which means that even if it's not so high, the very top of the hill is a bit cooler. And it used to be a bit complicated sometimes to ripen grapes at the top of the hill. And Mâcon is at the top of the hill in Meursault. Meursault-Blagny is at the top of the hill in Meursault. And it used to be a bit overlooked, like it's a place where it does not ripen very well. But with climate change, I think that most of the last years, it's probably one of the best Meursault we make, and probably even better than in more recognized places because of that climate change. The cooler places are becoming cooler.
Okay. Yeah, climate change. Now that we're on climate change, can we discuss the terrible vintage that was 2021, was it?
Not terrible, difficult vintage because the quality's there.
Yeah.
It's been terrible for me, the wine grower. For the commercial, it's not an issue. That's a good question. I know that lots of my colleagues say that this is a problem of climate change. We work a lot with some people at the university that work on vineyards and climate change, and they say that looking at longer time trends, we should have less frost because there will be less frosty days during the year. And by the way, less frosty days in March, April, and May. So I'm not sure that it's a matter of climate change, to be honest.
Hi, Christophe, I'll just share it now, but I popped a couple of photographs together just to illustrate how difficult the frost has been for you guys, because it's from your own Instagram page. Just bear with me there. You will see this now in a moment. So I don't know, do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so what happened last year is maybe because of climate change, we had a very nice end of March with temperature above 20 degrees, and which means that the buds explode and the vines start to grow. And what happened is, like, very beginning of April, we had a massive amount of cool air coming from Arctic going down through Europe, and that doesn't happen very often, and usually does not happen after the debudding of the vines. But what happens is, you know, when the vines has debudded, when you have fresh green leaves, they are very sensitive to low temperature, and so all of that killed almost all of the buds from the vines. To give you an idea, we did probably less than 10% of a normal crop in the Canton Charlemagne.
And what you see here, the next photograph is just amazing. Just explain what the fires are.
So here it's a photograph from the area in Puligny and Meursault, where we and all of the other growers in the area put candles in the vines to try to heat up the atmosphere and saving as many birds as we can.
My God.
Oh,
We're always making the comparison that we find that in the southern hemisphere, the vineyards are actually being damaged by fire that is just starting all by itself. And in the northern hemisphere, in Burgundy, you're actually having to set fires in order to bring the temperature up.
Yeah, we don't have problems of fires in Burgundy, but yeah, we have frost, and by the way, we also have an issue, and we're working on it with hotter climates. I would say that probably so far for Burgundy, climate change, it's not very politically correct, but has been on the upside for us, because we had lots of great vintage with very ripe grapes, very nice grapes, probably less mildew, and 2015, 2018, 2017, 2020 are amazingly good vintage, and mostly because of climate change, to tell the truth. On the downside of the hill, 2019, we had very little water. 2020, we had very little water and huge amount of heat that just like burned half of the crop. And so that's more of my concern on the long term. It's drought and excessive heat than the frost.
Okay.
God, it's just amazing change, isn't it? It's like, and then this comes out.
So yeah, so what should we be looking for in this Meursault?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. What makes this?
Yeah, what makes it so good?
Well, I think you talked about honey earlier. I think we're getting those very honeyed aromas coming out of the glass, but at the same time, you've got a wine which is, it's got that Meursault typicity of hay and nuts coming from it as well. So it's a very complex wine. There's no one characteristic which makes Meursault what a Meursault is. And you've also got this wine which has a backbone of acidity to it, which keeps it very rigid. And with age, that rigidity the shoulders will grow, the muscle will grow in the wine, and you will find the wine that becomes a little bit more unctuous, rather than quite lean as we're tasting it today at the moment.
I think what Mark says right is usually what defines a great wines, a grand vin, en français, is that complexity. And here on the nose, you're not able to say, okay, like that's yellow fruit, that's honey, that's hay. It's all of that. You have all of that on the nose. You're not able to find one or two major notes. You have many, many things. And I think it's the same. It's in the mouth. It's quite comfortable. You have a bit of shoulder, but at the same time, once you sip it, you have that tension, that acidity, that really balance. So you have a very nice balance on the nose between very different aromas, and it's the same on the palate. You have a very nice balance between acidity, a bit of fat, backbone, even a very tiny bit of tannin in the end that just makes you having the willing to have a bit more.
That's awesome.
To me, it's butter popcorn. Just it's opposite. It's so rich, isn't it? It's so rich. But is it this is so long to go, isn't it? It's so 10, 12, 15 years more.
Yes, but I think you can enjoy that quite pretty early, 3-4 years. You know, look at that. It's 5 years old and you already have lots of pleasure. So I think we used to have a lot of people wanting to have very old white wines, but more and more people enjoy younger white wines because they like more the fresher aromas. They don't like so much the honey aromas and so on. So it's also really a matter of taste. You know, I'm not sure there is a period that you should stick with. you can wait for it. If you like the aromas of older white wines, just keep a few bottles, discover that universe, those aromas, but at the same time, if you like it young, have it young, and maybe just, I would say, buy a 12-bottle case and just have one every year for 12 years. And so you'll have quite a good idea of what you really like.
And just one last thing, temperature is very important with this wine, I think. I think to have it too cold, you would miss so much. You have to have it just slightly less chilled.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, if you keep it in the fridge, pop it out, drink a glass, put it back in the fridge. Do that with a Sauvignon, it will be fine. But you will lose all of the complexity of their aromas because everything will be shut down by the coolness. The taste, you taste, but we'll just feel that it's really, really fresh. And the molecules, the smelly molecules won't be able to go out because the wine will be too cold. And so you will lose a fair part of the pleasure you could have at maybe 16 degrees instead of 12.
I thought so, yeah.
So just before we jump onto the reds, and I suppose if you haven't already, maybe do start to pour your Pinot. The Val de Moisine Pinot, I think, is coming next. We do need to probably keep it moving because it's I know you guys are an hour later, so it's after 9 o'clock in France for you guys now. So I'm slightly.
Yeah, it's extra hours, but that's smart paying. Don't worry.
But yeah, we'll just move on to that. Equally, it would be great to hear even in the chat if anyone is what you're liking, what you're loving. I mean, that Merce was amazing. So much of what so much of what makes that amazing though is and makes it expensive is probably the demand on it. And as the guy said, the amount of it that you make versus the amount of it you could sell if you just produced it in a factory, it probably adds so much to the price. But it really shows to me so far the Grand Ardèche is just really for value.
You come back to the Grand Ardèche and you see it's completely changed its profile.
I did not leave mine in my glass as you instructed me to go, and I didn't do it. So I'll do that now and come back to it. But so it'd be great to hear anyone else's thoughts on that, because certainly in terms of value, the Grand Ardèche just shows itself as shouting out loud that it's a really awesome value wine.
So should we try the Valmosine next, or?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We go for the Valmosine. So Valmosine is our project now almost 30 years old of Pinot Noir in the Var. But so the Var, you might know Bandol maybe, which is very famous, or Rosé de Provence. So it's the same area, but we are 100 kilometers from the sea, from the Mediterranean Sea. And what's more important is because we're very south, our vineyard goes from 400 meters high to 600 meters high, which means that we are higher than we are in Burgundy, because we're looking for a cooler climate, because we are really, really southernmost than here. And so as we always want to have a balance between alcohol and acidity, we want a climate that looks like a bit here and is not too hot, because Pinot is a very fragile grape.
Okay. The color is so light, it doesn't look like a wine that's from anywhere south at all. It's got just gorgeous color.
It smells of hay, freshly cut hay, as well as a bit of red fruit in there, but there's lots of grassy aromas. And I think when Louis Latour started looking outside of Burgundy after the success of the Ardeche, where we could plant Pinot Noir, it was a project that was not easy, because looking for an area which had the right soils, so clay-based soils, with the right temperatures, and at the same time adding something different from what we are used to in Burgundy, which was warmer weather. Because don't forget, 30 years ago, when we started planting Pinot Noir in the Var, the limiting factor was very, very honestly, cool weather. In the early 90s, the limiting factor of Burgundy, unlike today, was the coolness. Today, Christophe mentioned that he's having to combat some of the heat that we're getting in Burgundy. It wasn't the case 30 years ago. So the VAR was a great opportunity to see what we could do in an area with slightly more heat. And again, we didn't want to body build the wine. We wanted to get the elegance of the wine. And that's one of the words that is very important when we're talking about Louis Latour Pinot Noir, is elegance and finesse. We're not looking for wines that are hugely built. We're looking for wines that express the elegance of the Pinot Noir aromas and the color and the body.
Christophe, can I just ask you, what makes Pinot Noir so hard to grow?
It's, as I said, it's a very fragile grape. You know, if it's a bit too dry, you will see, as we had in 2020, they have a very thin skin on the grapes, and so the grapes can very quickly get dry and die because it's too dry or there is too much sun. Okay, but also it's it needs like very good condition to ripen because it takes quite a long time to ripen the tannins. And if it's too hot or you have too much sun, the problem is you will be able to ripen the tannins, but when you will be there, you will be maybe at 60 degrees alcohol. And everything about Pinot is finesse and lightness, okay? And also it's a very tricky grape to wine make, because contrary to what everything you will read in the wine books, it's a red wine that is very sensitive to oxygen, because you don't have a lot of tannin, you don't have lots of phenolics, and so you want to have the most you can, but at maybe 13 degrees alcohol. So it's quite tricky to have that equilibrium. And then you want to preserve that freshness and these aromas and this little color through winemaking, where you will put as little oxygen as you can to preserve that and not have a, you know, orange-like color and fading aromas.
Okay.
So, you know, if you make Syrah or Cabernet, they are very resilient to oxygen. I mean, fairly easier to wine make. Probably fairly more resistant to drought and many other things, and also fairly more resistant during the winemaking.
You did a vintage in Tasmania, did you?
Yeah.
Did you for Pinot Noir there?
Yeah.
And was it less or more difficult there?
It was more difficult. It was more difficult. Basically, one of the issues is Australia and Tasmania is you have a lot of potassium in the soil, and the potassium makes the acidity in the wines dropping. And so that's why in this country they use acid coming from elsewhere to put in the wines to keep the acidity high enough. And that's a real challenge to do a very nice, well-balanced Pinot Noir without using exogenous acids in Australia.
Okay.
Does it, Christophe, does the fact that, say, you worked with Pinot Noir in Tasmania, does the grapes that you kind of work with help define where you may end up want to spend your career? Would that have had an impact on your decision when you moved to Burgundy, given that you had worked in Bordeaux as well?
The thing is, I'm from the south of France, southwest. I'm from Bergerac, not. But there are many British. I don't know if there are many Irish, but there are many British in Bergerac, so it's quite well known. And you know, so it's like Bordeaux style wines, and I've been born and raised in Bordeaux style wines. And one day I came in. I have few friends who loved Burgundy, and once I came in Burgundy, And I fell in love with Pinot Noir. And I discovered a completely different universe. Red wines that have fruit aromas, that are easy to drink, that are happy. You know, I really describe them as that. The Pinot Noir for me is like a happy grape, you know, it makes like happy wines. It's not serious. You can take it very seriously, but it's also always full of joy. And so I fell in love with that. And so I said, okay, I want to do Pinot Noir again. And so that's when I went to Tasmania. I went to Tasmania to do Pinot Noir elsewhere.
Brilliant. It's a great answer. I'll always remember. I remember now that Pinot Noir is happy. So if I feel sad, I'll drink some Pinot Noir.
Yeah, you should do that. You know, Cabernet is sad. Cabernet is serious. It's a monk wine.
There's no one from Bordeaux here anyway. Mark, how about you? Are you the same? Do you have the same love for these grape varieties?
You know, I'm British by birth and was brought up on Bordeaux. And my first experience was in Bordeaux. It didn't last very long, but I came to Burgundy, and not only is it the wines, but the people, the environment. It's a welcoming environment. People want to share. It's a happy environment. As I like what Christophe said. Yeah, it's a happy wine. It's a happy environment. It's very welcoming. It's authentic. Basically, Burgundy is like its wines. It's the perfect environment to thrive, to live. If you enjoy natural, when I say natural, easy living, family lifestyle, good food, good people, and the wines of Burgundy, there's no better. There's no better, because you have a wine which is the Chardonnay, which when I arrived was the top of the spectrum in terms of white wines. Of course, you get Chardonnays from all over the world today, and people try to copy great Burgundy, but they can't really emulate it. And Pinot Noir there's only one home. It's Burgundy. It's Bourgogne, because we shouldn't say Burgundy, because Burgundy is not really a French, the right expression for what we have here is Bourgogne. It's a brand. It's a style. It's also a lifestyle of the wines, and the generations of ancestors that have built the 1,420 different vineyards is testament to how to the environment. No, Burgundy, Bourgogne is special.
But every now and again, you'll have a bottle of Bordeaux.
So I didn't. Sorry.
Every now and again, you might still nip back and have a bottle of Bordeaux.
Very rarely, I'm afraid.
No, look, it's hard to disagree with that. It's there's elegance abound here in all these wines, and there's no doubt. Certainly, you know, another thing that comes up often in tastings is so many people the world over think they don't drink Chardonnay or they don't like Chardonnay. And what's really happened is this resurgence, of course, of winemakers all across the world, Southern Hemisphere particularly, actually starting to go back to making wines all in that style of Burgundy. They've gone right back to it and brought it right back to basics, that it all happens in the vineyard, and they're doing less and less to do it. So that, if anything, is more emulation to what Burgundy has just kept doing for hundreds of thousands of years, and never changed. So it's
another important word in the vocabulary of Burgundy is coolness. I think that we're in a cool climate, and the cool climate allows the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay grape to express their profiles, their aromatic and body profiles of the wines in the best possible way. People try to emulate Pinot Noir and Chardonnay all over the world, but they don't quite get the right balance that we have in Burgundy. And it's not only about power, it's not only about freshness, it's about that balance that you get between the freshness of the wine and the fruit content. And just to refer back to what we were talking about, global warmings earlier, I don't know if it is global warming, but we are in a phase in Burgundy that has reunited almost the perfect conditions to get not only the balance in the wines, but a little bit more fruit than we had in the 70s and the 80s. That meant people thought Burgundy wasn't as consistent as other wine regions. And I think that's made a big difference. Just a little bit more ripeness, but keeping that coolness is very, very important. And I hope we can manage to keep the balance despite what we would say is some of the global warming aspects that we are beginning to see with early frost and also too much heat sometimes in the harvest. But at the same time, we've got wines that are extraordinary coming from the vineyards and probably the best that we've ever had, I would say.
The next Pinot Noir we're going to try actually is from
so it's from the south of the Beaujolais. You know, Beaujolais is like granitic soil, but the southernmost part of the Beaujolais is clay and limestone like it is in Burgundy. So that's where our idea of planting back Pinot Noir there comes from. So it's a project that is now a bit more than 10 years old. So that's very young vines, but still we're very, very happy because we are able to find a very well-balanced, fruity Pinot Noir from there. So that's vines we own and we cultivate, but from the south of the Beaujolais.
That was the question I was going to ask was, Beaujolais is famed for its granite. When we did our exams, we were always told it's AA granite, Gamay. And is this made on granite soil or is it limestone?
As I said, granite is Beaujolais Village and the Cru, Moulins, Avant, Juliénas, and so. But the Beaujolais area at the very bottom is clay and limestone, and that's why it's called pierre dorée, which means golden stones, because the limestone there is very yellow. And you see, if you go there, hike or bike, you will see all of these beautiful villages in Yellowstone, and that Yellowstone is limestone, and that's where we've planted.
And what is the difference between this and the one from the Var?
The terroir, because I would say it's probably, and the vines here are maybe a bit younger, but it's a different place, but the same kind of Pinot Noir, the same way of cultivating the vines, and the same way of winemaking, because it's Latour style. So it's really the place talking here.
Okay.
They're quite different, I think.
They're quite different. And I was just going to ask, did the Beaujolais people mind you coming in and planting Pinot Noir?
You know, it's like for every new project, there are people enthusiastic and there are people planting Pinot Noir and saying, that's a beautiful idea you're having, and I will do the same, and I will make the same kind of wines as you do. And there are people saying that we are not respecting traditions and so on. So, but we have friends still.
But it also shows how pioneering Louis Latour still is. We're still looking to push things further forward, looking for new investments, looking for new opportunities, but only if there's a real significant tradition there. And to be honest with you, yes, there were Gamay grapes in the Pierre Doré, but why did we start planting Pinot Noir? Louis Fabrice had this perception of the limestone soils would be very good for Pinot Noir. And then we actually found some Pinot Noir grapes, didn't we, Christophe, in the Pierre Doré, which gave us the fact, showed us the fact that they could grow there and that they could be successful. So then it wasn't just an idea. We went ahead and started planting vineyards from 2009, 2010. And today we have 25 hectares of vineyards, and this is, Louis Fabrice calls it Little Tuscany. It's Little Tuscany in Burgundy because of the slightly warmer climate, but it gives us another expression of Pinot Noir from Burgundy. Whilst at the same time, it's very different from the Var, it's also very different from our Corton or Alos Corton vineyards that we'll taste afterwards. But at the same time, it has a sense of place in the wine. And it has also the texture that allows us to have a wine which we can say, yes, it's Pinot Noir, it's elegant, but it's got its own unique character. And that's what makes it so interesting.
It's definitely different to the first one. I find it spicier and a little more
It's
tannic.
tighter, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
more tannic, and whereas the other is almost more approachable, maybe. Or
Yeah, it's a fruitier version.
It's almost as if it's even.
Yeah.
Often people say that the Pinot Noir from the Var is very new worldy. Yes, it's almost got that simple fruit approach. It hasn't got necessarily the edge of the Pinot Noir coming from Burgundy. It's slightly more easy to drink, but it's also not got that authenticity of the terroir of Burgundy. It's a different terroir. So it's something, a different expression of Pinot Noir, but we've tried to keep the elegance of in the Burgundy winemaking. I think that's very important. You see that even if they're different terroir, the winemaking sense is elegance and freshness of the grape.
The philosophy is the same, basically.
The philosophy, yes.
Lovely. So should we move to the last red?
So for the last red, we are in the heart of Burgundy, the heart of the Domaine Latour with Alos Corton village. So the Domaine Latour is 50 hectares, of which more than 30 are in Alos Corton, with 25 hectares of Grand Cru from Corton and Corton Charlemagne, then 6 hectares of Premier Cru and 5 hectares of Village, which this wine is coming from. So 2017 is a very interesting vintage because I think it is a very traditional vintage in the sense that it made like really easily approachable, very easily readable wines, fresh, with a great drinkability.
Can you see us still?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's check, we've changed position. That's right.
And I would think that this is a wine that would benefit from some more age.
Yeah, I certainly think it needs a little bit more, certainly compared to the two first ones, which are quite open. This is a little bit more withheld for the moment. It needs a bit more time to come out. But, you know.
Often in Burgundy, you have to drink the wines in the first 2 years they offer on the market. But then, like this one, maybe a bit. If you want to drink it now, you probably need to open it 12 hours before drinking it to give it a bit of time to open up, or maybe open it, leave it for at least now 3 or 4 more years.
Now, I better address that, Christophe, because I have told every person here to decant it a couple of hours before they had it tonight. So, and they did, and I definitely ran that past you. So, but tell me, does that so for anyone who's opened this tonight, would it be the wine to maybe hold on to a glass or two of for tomorrow night, and it will get better tomorrow?
I think it might be very interesting. If you've decanted it for the last 2 hours, it should probably taste like at its peak. But yeah, waiting a bit, leaving half a bottle for tomorrow might be a good idea.
Especially if you've got 6 other bottles or 5 other bottles anyway to get through.
If there's a perfect food match for this Pinot Noir, what is it?
Perfect. What? Sorry.
If there was a perfect food match, like if you had one thing to have with this wine, what would you have?
You know, when pairing food, I like to propose easy things, because often you will the other winemakers will maybe propose you like very fancy things that you will never cook at home. So, and I think that's quite a very, as I said, approachable, easily drinkable wine. And I think just a red meat that is not too gamey, probably, you know, or a Burgundy beef, beef in red wine sauce, or something like that is has a bit of sweetness and a taste of red meat, but not too strong.
Again, it's all to do with balance, isn't it? Not to overpower either good of the wine.
That's not a very, very powerful wine, and you want to enjoy its aromas. And so maybe even if you do a Burgundy beef with that and you drink that, maybe put 2 spoons of cranberry jelly maybe in the sauce, you know, to have that aromas and a bit of acidity in the sauce.
What with so many wines in the portfolio, when you pick up a bottle on Friday night to go home, where do you go? What is it? What do you like to drink?
I often have pizzas on Friday night, so it's more of an Italian one I would pick. But now, what I really like at the moment is the Bonne Vigne Franche 2017. So it's the same vintage. The wine is even probably a bit lighter than the Allos Corton, where you always have very earthy aromas and power, where Bonne Vigne Franche is more in elegance and very fine. But I love that wine because I know I open a bottle with my wife, and by the end of, before the pizzas arrive, we've already had 1 bottle.
That's, you can't argue with that. That's brilliant. Someone else just asking if we could just reconfirm the temperature, firstly, that you would serve this at.
This is all right between 16 and 18 degrees.
Okay.
What you really have to be careful about when you serve a wine is the temperature of the room, because even if you have the wine at the very perfect temperature, if you're in a very hot climate, the wine temperature will go up very quickly, and furthermore in the glasses. So that's really a thing. You must be careful of the temperature of the wine when you serve it, but also the amount you serve and the temperature around. If it's a very hot weather, serve very little glasses, often, but very small. So the wine stays at a good temperature, and you don't have after 15, 20 minutes, wine's too hot in the glass.
We're not in Tasmania though, we're in Dublin.
Okay, but I'm pretty sure you can have very hot weather in Dublin.
In Dublin, we need to put it in the microwave to keep it warm. You know, otherwise we're just too cold all the time here. So it's stunning, and it's the one of them all that we've had tonight, where I would just really enjoy watching this develop over the whole weekend and seeing actually how it just expresses itself all the time. We opened this. I mean, in here, I opened this at maybe 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock this morning, because we were decanting for Anne was joining us, so we were decanting for her, and so we opened it early. I did have a cork back in it, but it's expressing really well right now, isn't it?
Yep,
it's really good temperature wise. It's perfect. We've had heaters on in here, and it's not too hot. It's but then it is Dublin.
What's important also is the glass. It's good to have a nice, as you can see, that our glasses, they're quite voluminous, not too bowl-like. And you can drink Chardonnay and Pinot Noir to the same form of glass, quite long in the neck, not too wide, but a little bit wide, and it gives the wine. You can play with the wine in the glass, allow it to move it about, and that gives you the aromas, allows you to get the molecules working and to have the aromas, because Pinot Noir is a lot about aromas. Like Chardonnay, it's a lot about the aromas. It's not just about the taste or the color. It's about the smell as much as about the taste.
It's actually interesting, Mark. There on your glasses, they're not what you would expect actually for you to be drinking these wines out of. They're a far cry from what's to be seen as traditional Burgundy wine glasses. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think the traditional wine Burgundy glass is either the Chardonnay glass, the Ineos type glass, which is quite long, quite narrow, or the little bowl. And over the years, I've seen the glasses become more and more, I would say, a bit standardized, but it's because everybody realizes the best glass is something where you can play with the wine a little bit, and at the same time get your big nose in the glass and enjoy the aromas from it.
Yeah, it's practicality, I suppose, in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah, so honestly, my philosophy is I like just to crack the bottle open and allow the wine to evolve in the glass. And that's why I think it's quite nice to have a nice sized glass, so you can, if you feel that it's not right temperature or it's a little bit shy, then you can play with it and twirl it around the glass, allow the wine to evolve. And as the wine warms up in the glass, then it evolves. And it's like a flower opening in the morning of a beautiful day. It really allows all its texture and aromas to come out. And that's what I think is such nice about Burgundy wines, is that you can see the wines open in front of you. You don't have to wait too long.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So look, guys, I have to thank you for your time. I know it's now nearly, God, it's not far off, approaching 10 o'clock there. So we probably should wrap up in the next couple of moments. But I've put up, just for everyone else, I've put up the links as we've gone, of links of the various different wines. I've put a link up at the very end there, which is just a page with all of the wines on them, we're able to hold, I mean, pricing, as you've talked about, as we've talked briefly on, we've touched on climate and everything, and the prices of Burgundy have just there's increases talked of 30-40% increase because just, I suppose, because of the supply and demand and how the harvests have been. So those wines are available and will be at those prices. I'll email you all next week anyway with the recording of this and anything else we can do on those wines. We've small amounts of them at these prices if anyone wanted any of the Grand Ardèche or the Val de Moisine, but unfortunately within the next few weeks, never experiencing it, Latour experiencing it, we are with absolutely everybody, that Burgundy is just getting much more expensive. But all the more reason for us to find these alternatives and to find these great wines from outside of Burgundy and down in Var and down in Ardeche as well. So it's been a real joy to actually taste all of those side by side and to see what you're doing elsewhere as well. But a fascinating snapshot of everything that Latour are doing. You guys have been brilliant with your time. We're really appreciative. I think everyone's really enjoyed it. The numbers have only creeped up as we've gone on the call, so no one's crept away just yet, although there's probably some hungry people if they haven't had their dinner here, because we're only 8:30 here, just after 8:30 in Dublin. So look, on behalf of us and Wine Online, we've a big thank you to Fev as well, your agents on the ground here. They do a wonderful job for you. They promote and push your wines at every turn, and well, you've shown tonight why. So it's been a real joy. To all of you who tuned in and who came along, thank you, because it's Friday night and you could be in restaurants and everywhere else, but you're not. So yeah, look, thanks for coming along. We will send a recording next week. Any details, any other PDFs that we have on Christophe and on Mark and on Latour, And for that, I think that's it. Otherwise, have a great week.
Thank you very much. Will, thank you very much. Just to mention, Louis Fabrice Latour has a special love for Ireland because he did his early years of training in Ireland with Gilbey's. I don't know if you remember the name Gilbey's of Ireland, but he did his training with Gilbey's of Ireland as a young man before becoming today's general manager. And so Ireland's always been a special market for Louis Fabrice. He hasn't been back, obviously, because of COVID, but he does think of you all in Dublin and has happy memories and says a big hello to you all. So thank you very much for your time tonight. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been saying and our vision of the wines. Wine is all about what you like to drink, about how you like to drink it. There's no rules and regulations. I think that's very important. But we hope to bring a little bit of pleasure to everybody's table when you do drink Louis Latour wines. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Christophe.
Thank you very much.
Lovely evening. Thanks, guys.
And if there are any questions, then we can stay around for a few minutes if there are any questions. And if not, and you want to ask them, you can always send us an email. So
perfect. Well, we can hang on for a moment or two, and there may be one or two. Jan O'Brien always has questions. He's thanking you guys on the chat there to say great evening. Thank you very much. And come visit us in Dublin when you're next back over. There's always
Christophe was just saying to me he hasn't been to Dublin for about 25 years.
Yeah,
so I think he'd quite like the opportunity.
Let's, we have said it a couple of times before, so we really need to start being true to our word. But let's do this in person when you come. If you've any intentions to come back over anytime soon, there's always a welcome. So we could organise.
We know the hospitality of the Dubliners. No one's better. No one's better.
You may leave your French rugby team at home, though. They over here.
Well, hopefully they'll do quite well this year.
Well, look, I think that's it, guys. I think there's no more questions. I think we
fine.
We will let you lads.
Well, thank you for your support. Thank you for all the work that's gone into making tonight possible. We've really enjoyed it. It's always a great opportunity to talk about our wines and share our views and with customers from all over the world. And I hope it gives you an insight. As I said, Burgundy is all about hospitality, about opening our arms, and our wines are hopefully a reflection of that. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Last word goes to Christophe, though, down in Clontarf, who has just said the Cabernet is not sad. So we've been called on that, Christophe.
Yeah, but if I can say, the place you're talking about is more about Merlot than Cabernet.
Well, okay, brilliant. Well, look, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and it's been an
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and thanks to the FEV team, especially Audrey, who's done so well in putting us all together tonight.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Audrey.
And can I just say thanks to everybody for actually supporting our tastings. You've been brilliant, especially this one. I know, like cost-wise, it was a big ask, but hopefully that the wines have really shone through, and hopefully we'll have another tasting for you fairly soon. But thanks for showing up. Yeah.
Have a great evening, guys, and a great weekend. And thanks again in France, you guys.
Bye.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks again.